Usually, people, if you want to persuade them, they don't need more reasons to say yes. They need fewer reasons to say no. People don't buy when the offer makes sense. They buy when the decision feels right. When it was A/B tested, there was a 167% increase in conversion. Not by changing the product, not by making it more attractive, just by understanding what was holding people back.
When you offer something for free, it's automatically devalued in the mind of the buyer. They automatically think this isn't really worth much if they're giving it to me for free.
The only thing that changed is context. The thing to realize is that as a salesperson, you can seldom change the product. You can seldom change the price, but you have unlimited power over context.
The bar's so low to get into sales. We need to elevate the profession. That's what I've been trying to do for the last 10 years. Hey, welcome to Sales and Cigars, the podcast for entrepreneurs where the only smoke we blow is cigar smoke. I'm your host, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development. This episode is brought to you by the Sales Integrator. Crush your sales obstacles with the Sales Integrator. Today's episode, I have a conversation about consumer psychology and how it applies to being more effective at sales. My guest is Matt Sucha from MindWorks. He's the first person I've ever met who went from being a mathematician and an actuary, an actual actuary, to becoming a sales trainer. We get into his inspiration and his passion. It's a great story. We want you to listen to this entire episode because Matt makes an offer especially for you, our audience of business owners and sales professionals. Along the way, we talk about making your offers better, not by lowering prices or adding features or bonuses, but by the context you use to talk about your offers. That's where the psychology comes in. So go grab a cigar, grab a cocktail, strap in for another educational episode of Sales and Cigars. Thanks. Matt, welcome to Sales and Cigars. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to jump on and have a conversation.
Walter, thank you so much for having me.
It's looking forward to this because you've got a book that we'll get into talking about, The Hidden Yes, but it's kind of a topic that is near and dear to my heart about being able to be effective in sales and really reaching that buyer, because I think the psychological aspects of sales is not taught, it's not talked about enough. So I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks a lot. And consumer psychology is just so dear to my heart. So always happy to chat about it.
Great. So let's start off with, is there a book, besides your own book, is there a book that you, in a business context, that you gift or reread on a regular basis?
Actually, Walter, there are a couple. For those just starting with consumer psychology, I would highly recommend the Bible of Persuasion, which is the famous book by Buck Cialdini, Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. But then there is something even more powerful. And I think your listeners will understand as we carry on this conversation why it's so dear to my heart. And that's the book, The Catalyst by Jonah Berger, because there he manages to really debunk what is behind people saying yes, and what is, in my opinion, the biggest mistake salespeople, marketers make when they try to persuade their customers. So those two books would be Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion, and The Catalyst by Jonah Berger.
Those are, I haven't read the second one. The first one I've read and I've struggled, right? It's a dense book. I like the way you refer to it as the Bible, because I mean, he's sort of like this man behind the scene, Wizard of Oz, right? He was actually part of a couple of presidential campaigns. He came in late to try to save Hillary Clinton's campaign, and he got her a bump, but it wasn't enough to carry the day. But so I mean, I think that's a great book, but you really got to spend time with that and really dig in, because he's so smart, and it's so dense with information. The other book, the Berger book, Catalyst, is that is that more for salespeople, more for business owners? Where would you put that?
Actually, Walter, it is not, because both of these gentlemen, they are professors, and you can feel that they have very strong academic backgrounds, and everything that they talk about, everything they write about, is rooted deeply in research. So neither influence is, well, I mean, to some extent, it is also for salespeople, but you have to kind of extract the the gems, and you have to be able to put it in your context. When it comes to the second book, it is the same thing, I would say, but the main message of the book is, and that's why it's so dear to my heart, is that he's saying that, usually people, if you want to persuade them, they don't need more reasons to say yes. They need fewer reasons to say no. And he manages brilliantly to uncover some of the key psychological barriers that stand in people's ways as they are deciding about things. And why I love the book so much is that this is the main pillar of my own methodology, of our own methodology at MindWorks, where the first thing we teach people to do is not to ask themselves the question, well, so how can I motivate Walter to do XYZ? The very first question we teach people to ask is, why not? Why would not Walter do what I want him to do? And we teach them to uncover those hidden psychological barriers. Because as I said, usually when people don't do what you want them to do, it's not a problem of a lack of motivation. It's usually a problem of some psychological barriers standing in their way.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have to pick that up. I'm just a dumb sales guy, so I'll have to work through those academic big words, the 25-cent words, right? But
Happy to assist you, Walter.
So let's talk a little bit, give the audience a little background on your entrepreneurial journey. Don't go back to grade school, but like, how did you get to be doing what you're doing, being an author, running an agency to help businesses, master this consumer psychology? Where'd this all start?
It is a story of love, but not the love that you might think. I was on the track to become a mathematician, but it was a very rational decision back 15 years ago. But as I was, going through university, I came across one book, and that book was Predictably Irrational by a gentleman named Dan Ariely. And this book changed my life. It was the first book I read on the topic of behavioral economics and consumer psychology. And I thought, well, wow, this is my calling. And this happened some 13, 14 years ago. When I finished my studies, I got a job as actuary at an international insurance company.
You were an actuary?
I actually was, yeah.
Wow.
But I was sitting there behind my desk, going through huge Excel sheets, and I kept dreaming about teaching people, about helping companies leverage the insights from consumer psychology. And 3 years in the job, exactly 10 years ago, in 2015, I remember I stood up, I went to my boss, and I quit my job. With the idea that I would be helping companies out there leverage these insights to help them boost their sales. And that's how it all started. I fell in love with consumer psychology, and the rest is history. Over the past decade, we managed to work with some of the biggest banks, insurance, telecommunications, and helping them exactly do this, understand their customers, understand how their customers decide, and help them make their communication more effective through the power of consumer psychology.
That's a great story. It's the first time I think I've spoken to somebody who admitted to being an actuary. My wife is my wife is a CPA, and an auditor, and a forensic accountant. And I tease her that the only people she gets to make fun of as professionally is actuaries, because their job is more boring than her job. I just couldn't do either of those things. I respect them immensely, but holy crap, it's a lot of numbers and a lot of spreadsheets.
It is. And I don't deny that all those numbers and all those Excel sheets were a part of my decision to quit.
Well, I'm glad you did, because this gives us this opportunity to have a conversation. So one of the things that I think we talked about initially, that, there's some maybe 3 mistakes that sort of ruin those sales conversations. So why don't we start there and try to unpack some of those basic things that salespeople do that they feel is right, but is just gets them off on the wrong foot, that gets them walking down the wrong path.
During this 10-year journey in consumer psychology, I was also discovering a lot of things, we try to use different frameworks, different consumer psychology frameworks, but nothing really worked. And then we kind of built our own thing, exactly built on those 3 fundamental mistakes that we have seen marketers and salespeople make over and over and over again. The first one, and the biggest one, is the one that I already touched upon. And that's that when we try to persuade someone, we tend to focus on motivation only. How can I make my offer more attractive? How can I give a discount, add something on top just to make it look better? But very often, this is not the problem. When the customer doesn't do what you want them to do, it's usually not a problem of motivation, but this problem of psychological barriers. In my book, and also in our training, we teach people about 4 fundamental psychological barriers that are ruining your sales performance. So if you want, we can talk about those also.
Sure. Yeah, let's do that too. I think salespeople who haven't had any kind of training, they default to talking about themselves. They default to talking about features and benefits of their products, and they often talk about what they think is important. And they don't ask enough questions. They don't dig into what really is of a concern to their prospect, to their buyer, and they don't know enough about their buyer. So let's just dive into those 2 topics. I think will provide a ton of value to our listeners as to what they could start to think about and do different.
I think the very first thing for salespeople to understand or to realize is that people don't buy when the offer makes sense. They buy when the decision feels right. And these are 2 very different things. We try to make the offer make sense through arguments and discounts and benefits and so on. But let's talk about, I think, the biggest sales killer of all, and that's uncertainty. Uncertainty is the most important psychological barrier, and I'll give you an example of how uncertainty can be killing your conversions. So this is a case study my team worked on. So we were called in by an insurance company, and they were struggling with a campaign they wanted to. They were sending out tens of thousands of emails to their existing customer base, and they wanted to give them travel insurance for free for the whole year. So it was a good product. It was for free. Of course, the logic behind it was the more products you have with my company, the less likely you are to leave. And once the free year ends, you will be automatically renewed for a certain amount. But no one was interested in that offer, and so they called us in quite desperate, telling us, well, what are we doing wrong? We're giving them a good product for free, and people don't want it. So our first thought was, well, this is obviously not a problem of motivation. how can you make the offer, the product more free? You cannot. So we started uncovering what might be some barriers, some uncertainties holding people back. So we started speaking with customers, and we discovered two fundamental problems. The first one was that as people read through the email, they thought, well, but this sounds too good to be true. They're giving us something for free. Why? Is it an insurance policy that I can actually rely on? Or will I be better off, if I decide to go traveling, to buy an actual policy that I am sure it will cover my needs if I'm in trouble? So this was the first uncertainty. So people were afraid that they couldn't rely on the insurance. And the second thing was, and we have all been burned at some point in our lives, you go for something for a free trial, you insert your credit card, and you forget about it, and you are charged for months, for years. And this was the second concern, the second uncertainty. So people were afraid that they would simply forget about the free trial ending, and they would keep paying for the insurance. So we thought, well, we have to address these problems. So what we did was that we directly inside the email, we added the coverage amounts to show people, well, you don't have to be afraid because this is a valid insurance with these coverages. And then we told them, this policy includes all the most frequently purchased coverages for a travel insurance. To address this uncertainty, well, will that cover all my needs? So this is how we address the first uncertainty. And the second uncertainty, we just added one simple sentence. Don't worry, you won't forget, because we'll remind you well in advance. When it was A/B tested, there was a 167% increase in conversion. Not by changing the product, not by making it more attractive, just by understanding what was holding people back, addressing that uncertainty, addressing that concern, removing it, and simply the conversion skyrocketed. And this is the power of when you understand what's holding people back, what are the psychological barriers in the background.
So can you use, in the context we're talking about, can you use doubt and uncertainty as synonymous?
Absolutely. It might be worries, uncertainties, fears, doubts. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that I think it's not talked about very much. But when you put together a marketing piece or you put together an offer, it's something that I think I learned this the hard way over the last few years, where when you put the offer out, and if you don't address the common doubts, right, there's always going to be some that people come up with that you're not, but those significant doubts, like the two that you described, we need to address those. We need to think about why somebody wouldn't do this, and we need to prepare for that. That insurance policy, I think there's another thing, and I'm curious as to your thought here. When you offer something for free, it's automatically devalued in the mind of the buyer. They automatically think, wow, this isn't really worth much if they're giving it to me for free. And I've learned that the hard way, where if I don't charge for a service, if I don't charge for some webinar, the people that I'm looking to talk to are going to say it's not worth the time because they're not charging me for it. And it seems counterintuitive, but it goes back to your original point about logic and feelings, and logic and how somebody perceives the situation and their feelings, right? Their feeling of how this offer sits with them and what's being stated. If that doesn't feel right, they can't move forward. That's one of the big blockages, right?
Absolutely. This exactly plays into what I call in my book perceived value. Because there is a big difference between an objective value of your offer and a perceived value. To be honest, the objective value doesn't matter at all. Because if I can't see the objective value, I mean, who cares? The only thing that matters is perceived value. So how your customers are perceiving your product, your service, your offers. And there are just so many ways how you can tweak the perceived value without touching the product, without touching the actual service you provide. Just in the way you describe it, just by highlighting how much time, how much effort goes into it, and price and something being free or being paid is exactly about the perception of value. If something is for free, well, it cannot be really valuable. So people don't care. They might sign up for your webinar, but they will never show up. So absolutely, it's all psychology. It's all consumer psychology. And this perceived value, by the way, it's not really a tool to address and remove the barriers, but it's a psychological tool to increase the attractiveness of your offers. So it's something a little bit different, and that's what my second part of my book is about. So how you can motivate people without changing the product, without changing the price.
Well, let's dive into that a little bit more, because let's assume that we have an offer that's of value, right? And we're talking to a buyer who has the problem that we're talking to. Like, I mean, that's important, right? You got to be clear about who you're talking to, and that it's a good fit, and your offer provides that value. Now, it like taking that to the next level, the second part of the book, let's talk about what people need to think about with their offers to change how they discuss it, how they present it, how they, what's on their landing page, what their videos say, how they promote this, to take away some of those fears, but also help them, right? Because we want to address doubts, but we also want to help them see that they can achieve the dreams, that they can get someplace where they really want to go. They can get to the freedom or whatever that thing is.
Yeah. Well, you started by talking about the three fundamental mistakes. So we touched on the first one, which is, overly focusing on motivation and neglecting the barriers. And the second part of the book is about the second mistake. And that's when it comes to motivation, because of course, motivation is also very important. We tend to think of motivation only in terms of price. And if you reduce the price, you increase the motivation, you increase the attractiveness of your service, of your products. Or if you add more benefits on top, then again, you increase the attractiveness of your offers. And what we say is that this might not work. And if it does, it costs you a lot of money, it costs you margins. What you should be working with instead is context. Because context is your super weapon. Now, let me give you an example. So imagine you want to buy a car, and you did your research, and now the big day has arrived, and you're going to the car dealership to pick up your new car. Let's say it costs $50,000. So there is this salesperson, you sit down, you're about to sign the contract. He leans towards you and he tells you, well, Walter, I shouldn't, but I have to tell you this. I really like you. And we have a second dealership. It's just 15 minutes away from here. And you can get the exact same car at a discount. So instead of $50,000, you would pay $49,920. You would save $80 on this car. Would you go or you wouldn't go?
Wouldn't go.
You wouldn't go. No one would. So you wouldn't care about the $80. So now let's change the context a little bit. Now you got your new car and you're thinking, well, I should also, buy a new shirt. If I'm driving a new car, I need to dress up. So the next day you go shopping, and then you try on this new shirt, and there is a sales assistant. She's really helpful, and you're about to go to the cashier and pay for the new shirt, which costs $90. And she runs towards you and she's telling you, I shouldn't, Walter, but I have to tell you this. We have another shop, which is just 15 minutes away from here. This exact same shirt, we have it there at a discount. And instead of $90, it only costs 10. You can save $80 on this shirt. Would you go or would you not go?
I mean, for the purposes of this conversation, for the $70, I would go. Yeah, sure. For the
Most
15
people would. You wouldn't hesitate, saving $80 on $90 shirt. It makes all the sense in the world. But if you just think about those two situations, in the first one, you were not interested in saving $80. In the second one, you were. Did you have to work less for the first $80? No. Can you buy less with the first $80? No. I mean, it's the same money. The only thing that changed is context. And the thing to realize is that as a salesperson, you can seldom change the product. You can seldom change the price, but you have unlimited power over context. And what is context? It's the words that you use. It's the order in which you talk about it, in which you give information. It might be a question you decide to ask or not to ask. All this immensely shapes how your customers, how your clients perceive your value. I mean, the value of your services, your products. Let me tell you about a beautiful case study. What I do with in keynotes, in workshops, I divide people in two groups based on the last digit of their social security number. If it's between 0 and 4, you scan the first QR code. If it's between 5 and 9, you scan the second QR code. Is it possible that the last digit of your social security number might influence how much you're willing to pay for a wireless keyboard, leather gloves, and a hand blender? It shouldn't, right? But very consistently, and I have run this experiment with thousands of people across the globe. The group where the social security number ends with 5 to 9 is willing to pay roughly 45 to 55% more for the same products as the first group. The same product, the same people. What changed? Well, of course, the social security number is just a way to split people into groups. The only thing that changed was the question that I asked right before asking both groups, what is the maximum you would pay for those three products? I asked the first group, tell me yes or no, if you would be willing to pay $19 for each of these items. And I asked the second group, would you be willing to pay $97 for each of these items? And they had to choose yes or no. I didn't care what they chose. But what changed? Suddenly, the context changed. Because the first group was suddenly thinking, well, $19 for a pair of leather gloves, that's quite cheap. But how much more than 19 am I willing to pay? The second group was thinking, well, 97, that's probably too much. But how much less than 97 am I willing to pay? The first group was drawn toward 19, the second group towards 97, and it hugely influenced their subsequent willingness to pay for the products. And this is the power of context. And you are able to design the conversation, design the sales interaction in such a way that your offers, your prices are perceived in much more favorable ways compared to if you don't do it. So this is the power of context, and this is the second mistake people often make, just focusing on price and benefits and neglecting the power of context.
That's why when you see a lot of offers done from a stage or on a commercial, they start off here, but wait, there's this, but we started at a higher number so that some people are able to drop into a little bit less than the 97 and still be willing to pay more. That's what you're saying, that the context. And I think that's a very simple. It's a simple concept, right? To frame your product or service in the right context. But I think people are going to need to read your book to really understand what that means and how they can do those applications to their world and how they change the cadence of their questions or the order of their questions or the words. So let's talk a little bit about, why you wrote the book, right? Because you definitely got passion around this idea. And, when we'll talk about where they can get the book here in a minute, but what do you want people to take away from the book? What's the one or two big pieces that they should think about when they go to have a conversation with one of their buyers? What is that you wrote the book for a reason? It's not to be a New York Times bestseller. You're trying to help people. Is my gut reaction here. So what are you
Absolutely.
trying to get them to see?
Look, and it boils down to why I quit my job 10 years ago. I wanted to help people see the power of consumer psychology, because there is a huge body of science somewhere that sheds a light on why people do what they do, why they decide the way they decide. But it's very academic. And my mission of the past decade has been to translate science into business language. And that's what the book is about. It's a guide. And, my journey started with a book. That's why I was very reluctant for many years to write one. Because I thought, and I had read just so many great books and so many books that shouldn't exist. And I didn't want to add one more average book. So, whenever I was asked, when will you write your own book? I mean, you're doing great stuff. I love your training. I love your content. I was like, well, not yet. And then something changed 1.5, 2 years ago when we started licensing our methodology. It's called the SURF method, and our SURF method training to trainers across the globe. And I suddenly had sales trainers with 20 years of experience sitting in my onboarding program, and they were amazed by the power of consumer psychology, by the methodology, what it can do. They were telling me, I have never thought of customers, of sales in this way. And that's when I thought, okay, now I'm quite sure we have something to add to the world. So this is why I wrote the book, because I was suddenly, finally convinced that this is something unique and book worthy. And I hope that, and it's actually, that's the feedback I'm getting when people read the book. They're telling me it's extremely practical. That they had not read a book on consumer psychology, it would be so practical. And that was my goal.
Well, and when we started off with the two books that you gave us at the beginning, Cialdini's stuff is great, right? It's all there, but it's like so dense and so hard to pull it out, right? Because it's so academic. And what you've done is make it attainable, reachable to a group of people that need to get better, right? Salespeople, the bar's so low to get into sales, and we need to elevate the profession. That's what I've been trying to do for the last 10 years, is elevate. And that's what you're doing, is you're giving people access to these ideas and these concepts in a practical way so that they can go put it into play. And that's a great reason to write a book. So I'm excited to tell people where they can get the book. Tell people where. I think you have a surprise for the audience. So just jump in as to where we can go get the book, because I think it's important.
Yeah. So we've prepared a special gift for the listeners of this show, and that's signed copies of my book. So for you guys, if you just got intrigued by consumer psychology, if you want to get better at understanding your clients, at crafting these customer interactions in a manner that will make them much more effective, then go to thehiddenyes.com/book. .com/cigars with an S at the end. That's where you can get this signed copy. And we also have a small gift for you waiting on that website. So it's thehiddenyes.com/cigars. And the signed copies are waiting for you.
And that's very generous, and we truly appreciate that. And I would encourage everybody that's listening to go to thehiddenyes.com/cigars. It's going to be in the show notes, so just go down and click at the bottom. Matt's profile is there, the website's there, but go click on the book and get it, and start to understand these concepts and how you can apply them to your everyday conversations with your buyers, because you're going to elevate your game. Matt, last question I always ask every guest. Any relationship, past or present, with cigars?
Oh man, not a good one. I have this one terrible experience. I was meeting a friend. He was just starting a cigar import business, and he gave me a cigar. And being a newbie with cigars, I probably smoked it the way I wasn't supposed to smoke it. And on my way back home, I started feeling weird, and I was really in a hurry because I had to hop on a call. It was a strategy call with my team, and by the time I got home, I was barely able to stand, so I had to go get in my bed, open the windows, close my eyes, and turn off the camera. I was just listening in and hoping to fall asleep and to wake up healthy again. So, me and cigars, we haven't found
balance yet. Yeah. That's not an uncommon story, especially the first time. I've experienced it my first time. I didn't have a meeting directly afterwards, but it wasn't a great experience. But I learned a lesson. So, folks, go get the book. thehiddenyes.com/cigars with an S. Go check out Matt's profile, check out the website, look at all the good works that he's doing, take advantage of this offer, and apply this to your world, and get better, elevate your game. Matt, thank you very much.
Walter, thank you.